What's going on, everybody? Patrick Auger and Riggs here with the Body Lock, and we're talking about the Stamp Fairtex controversy at Unbreakable III. So if you missed the event, in the main event, we had Stamp Fairtex fighting Alyona Rassohyna, and she was winning the fight. Seemed like it was going to be a Fairtex cruising to a clear decision, and within the last 10 seconds or so, got caught up in a guillotine by Rassohyna and tapped. But after the fight was over, she celebrated like she won. It certainly seemed that she thought she had won, and she put out a statement on Instagram that said, I got caught in a guillotine, but I could still breathe. I tried to reach with my hand to push my opponent's face, but it got stuck on her elbow. The referee thought I tapped. I would like to say thank you to everyone who supported me. Sorry that I disappointed, and I would like for a rematch to make it all clear. Congratulations to my opponent. I respect the referee's decision. So we've seen this before where there's been some controversial finishes in one, and, they sometimes get overturned. And we're going to ask that question, will this get overturned? But first of all, Drake, let's start with this. Did Stamp actually tap?
Well, Pat, what fight were we talking about? It was when we were talking about Shibatar. Remember good old Shibatar from New Year's Eve, and we were both talking about how we both don't have the best vision whatsoever, as you guys can tell with our spectacles. we can each see very close to our our hands, but that was a case where that looked like a pretty clear tap. Shibatar ref just somehow completely missed it. In this case, referee didn't miss it because it was a bit more obvious even than Hiroya's tap on Shibatar. This was 100% a tap, no question about it. It was about as clear of a tap as you could get. And of course, positioning was a little bit not what you see typically for a guillotine to be pulled off of. So I saw that argument made on Twitter, or, people saying like it was weird that she tapped from right there. Not typically what you see and all that, but no, it was 100% a tap. Unless I'm very, very blinder than I thought I was. This one's undeniable. Like the Shibatar one, you can make a better case for, and that one was very clear too.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly looked like a clear tap. And you got to remember, MMA is not Stamp Fairtex's first sport, right? She is a Muay Thai fighter. That was what she was known for. She's moving into MMA, doing a lot of what a lot of kickboxers, Muay Thai fighters, they cross over in sports. It's a thing that's been going on for ages. But a lot of people are speculating here too that what might have happened is she kind of panicked. She got caught in a choke. She didn't know how to get out of it, and she panic tapped. I think that's probably the case here, where she, at first, it definitely seems like she hesitates afterwards, right? She kind of taps and then she stops. She might have been able to catch her breath or something and then stop in some form or fashion, but it's a tap. There's no way you can look at that. If I'm a referee and I see that, I'm assuming you tapped. And that's the other piece of this is when it comes to the referee, they tell you before you even go into that fight, like, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I expect to see. They go over the rules with you to make sure that you understand. If you have any questions, you get to ask. That's the general kind of way that referees work before fights, is they talk to the fighter, say, hey, I'm reffing your fight. This is what's going on. So Stamp must have known, when it got stopped, even if she thought she won, if she thought she made it to the bell, that upon replay, she must have realized that she looked like she tapped. And, that's part of the reason she said she respected the opponent or the ref's decision. But I mean, we know how one championship operates. We've seen things before. The committee, right, reviews controversial aspects of fights and has overturned them. So, I mean, let's talk about some of what the committee's done. Suplex is by far the biggest thing that they've overturned. And I don't know, in terms of that suplex, seemed pretty fair at the time, right?
Well, Pat, there have been multiple. Which are you talking about? And just to give myself a shameless plug here, I say that because I did do a little deep dive into this. What was that about? Was that in 2019 now? Let me scroll up to the top of the page. Yeah, October 2019, directly after the controversy following Jingnan and Lee 2, where there was a no call on the suplex, which spurred the entire thing here because there have been If my memory is correct, there were two that were actually overturned before that one, which made a whole gray area. So if you guys want to check that article out, please do. Assessing the One Championship Suplex controversy, that is on our website, The Body Law. Go and check it out and see all that goodness. But yes, there have been two prior to that incident that should have been a no contest or disqualification, whatever you want to call it, that were overturned, and they were very blatant. And if that's the rule, then right, you got it right there, refs. But then the interesting thing was in that case right there with Angela Lee, who was defending her title in that one, she hits the suplex. Suplex is written in the rules prior to the event, written in the rules that no suplexes of any kind. And then afterward, we're told that no, suplexes cannot be done. They cannot land, but you can't land on the head though. Like there was some changing up to the rules here, and never got a response back to clarification on this. Of course. So it's just a funny thing where I would say that that was a case a bit of playing favorites there, and you can definitely say Stamp is in that same boat. But then you look at the suplex that did get overturned or disqualification prior to that. Christian Lee, who, that guy's the champion now, related to Angela. Just maybe at the time, I guess he might not have been as high on their totem pole as he is now, so maybe they let it slide. But then another case that you have to look at, which I think is probably the most absurd, and all these suplex ones are very bad in their own right. But if you remember, Pat, Giorgio Petrosian, who is now the current bantamweight Muay Thai champion, he lost to Pichindi Academy. He lost to him, split decision. But then a week later, I believe, they're like, nah, he shouldn't have won. He shouldn't have won that one. We're going to give it actually to Petrosian. And we're like, wait, what? Why? Why is this being overturned? Like, nah, that we just didn't agree with that decision. That was pretty much their reasoning for overturning a legitimate win for, Pichindi. So that one's insane. And you got to think too, let's connect the dots a little bit. Petrosian is an Evolve MMA guy who owns Evolve MMA, which is another gray area. Chatri, he owns this gym, which houses several of these fighters. It's very bizarre. And just, there's so many things to unpack like this. And it's funny, just to circle to it all, I actually rewatched the very first women's fight in one earlier today between Nicole Chua and Jeet Toshi at 1-3. And of course, Nicole, that was her one and only fight. She was an Evolve fighter as well. And it's just funny to see at the third one event, she gets the win. Big moment, of course, first Singaporean fighter, female fighter, whatever, she gets the win. Chatri storms the cage and gives her a hug and everything. It's just a weird sight. It's just a weird thing to think about. Imagine Dana doing that and the incredible backlash that there would be. Like, whoa, he's putting Connor up on his shoulders. Something crazy. Like, it's the same thing, but we've seen it in multiple cases now. And just to reflect on it that way after everything that's happened in one's history, controversially, that was just funny for me to see today, especially with this happening. Now, to get back to the question, if this will be overturned or not with Stamp, I lean towards it not being right now, just because of the fact that this fight, I believe, was tape delayed. I believe that this fight happened on one Unbreakable 1 or 2. One of these events that already happened, and the fact that they've had time, unless they want to continue to play it up like, oh, it happened live, and then they're going to wait. But if it happened already, they've had time to think about it. And then Stamp having her reaction, that she would have been in on that discussion too. And if she was really upset about it or what have you, I think she would have said something a lot sooner. I don't know. I think that it'll probably stay this time, and no doubt about it, they'll do a rematch, because you got to think about it. Rassohyna, definitely the most legit opponent that Stamp has fought in MMA so far. But again, somebody who's being brought in to lose, essentially, because she hasn't fought since, I think, 2018. She had a gap or so. She's got, of course, good wins and the most experience that Stamp has fought in MMA. But again, they're building her up still. She's still young into MMA, as you said, a Muay Thai fighter. And yeah, it was probably more of a panic tap than anything. But if you just look at connecting all the dots and everything, I don't know. I don't know, Pat. How do you feel about it with especially the consideration of the possible tape delay? I don't have confirmation on that, but I know they have done that with some of these fights.
Yeah, I think this is tape delayed. Everything that I've seen from a couple of sources have said it's tape delayed. I can't confirm that 100%, but I would believe that's probably true. Uh, of course, Stamp wouldn't post anything. They're good about social media. Not they don't like to advertise these shows that they do on tape delay. So I'm sure this came out just recently. All of that as well, in terms of Stamp's statement, but in terms of you brought up the commission's previous I don't know, I don't really know what to call them except decisions when it comes to these things. And George Petrosian is by far the most egregious example of this. Was judges scored it a certain way, you lost, and we've seen plenty of fights where it's like, well, maybe it should have gone the other way, but the judges do that. But one's judges and their entire commission, you got to remember, this isn't like the United States where they have athletic commissions. They have certain rules that they have to follow. That it's all in a bubble, in a sense that one has a very big influence over. So when you take all of that into account, they were able to just go ahead and say, yeah, this was, we didn't like that fight. Same with the suplex rules, right? Just kind of, oh, well, suplexes are now illegal. We never really said that before, but they're illegal. And then, yeah, they're illegal, but only when they're on your head. They've played favorites before. And before I go into whether or not I think the commission overturns this, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Let us know how you feel about this controversy, and if you think that she tapped, and the answer to this question right here on whether the commission will overturn it. And so for me, I think that what's going to happen is in this case, I don't think they're going to overturn it. I think there's too much media saying, no, this was a clear tap. This was a clear thing. As you mentioned, it's tape delay plays a factor in that as well, because of, how long do you want to wait before you say, oh, actually, we're going to overturn it. And then somebody brings up the fact, if it truly was tape delayed, saying this happened a month ago. Why are you just now? So I think part of it was they wanted to see what the media was feeling about this. My guess is instead what they'll do is they'll run it back. Maybe Chatri says something along the lines of, oh, yes, very controversial, so we're going to run it back immediately. But I don't think they necessarily overturn it here, because it doesn't help them to overturn it with Stamp in MMA. I think that if this was some controversy in a Stamp Fairtex Muay Thai title fight, I think then by all means they overturn it, or they run it back, or they do some type of rematch immediately and say this is a thing. But without any belt on the line, with yes, it's one of their people they're trying to build up, but it's not an opponent where overturning it looks particularly good and makes a big difference in terms of who Stamp would fight next and where she would go in the division, I suppose. So that's my thought on it. I mean, that's how I feel in terms of, if they were to overturn this, what does it really gain Stamp and the promotion except criticism?
I might have to disagree with you on that. I think that in MMA, it's much more important to what they're trying to do, because you got to think about prior to Angela Lee, getting pregnant and having her baby and everything. The talk was kind of, all right, well, who's she gonna fight next? She's beaten everybody else. And then Stamp comes over to MMA, like, oh, that's the one. That's the fight. We want to make this one happen. Undefeated, Muay Thai, and then MMA, build her record up nicely. And then she could fight the unbeaten in the strawweight division. Angela Lee, the champion, all this. That's the fight to make. Two of these stars, Thailand versus Singapore, yada, yada. So I guess the benefit to overturning this would be to keep her record nice and flawless, nice and shiny on paper, and just put more stock behind the fact that, oh, she hasn't been legitimately beaten yet, and spin it that way. Whereas, we've seen her do her thing in Muay Thai at this point. The ultimate goal is to get to that Angela Lee fight. She's talked about it. She wants to progress towards that. This is a setback. Of course, Angela Lee has not had her baby yet, but, was getting close. So I think that if this happened in Muay Thai, they'd be a lot more okay with letting it go. And we did see that she did lose to Janet Todd. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that's the right person that did beat her in Muay Thai. And hey, they could have overturned that if they felt like it. It was a rightful victory for Todd, but they can do whatever they want, obviously. So in this case, there's a little bit of a more reason, I think, for them to want to, keep Stamp nice and shiny, if that makes sense.
I mean, I can see that. I still think, again, I guess I differ in that it's early enough. It wasn't enough of a contender that they can always just say she rebounded from that loss and came back stronger, right? Like, I guess that's the way I'm phrasing it and thinking about it. But let us know in the comments. Let us know what you think in terms of if they would prefer to overturn this, if they will. What was there enough controversy there? Did she not tap? Did she tap? Let us all know that in the comments. Also, hit that bell so that you know when we're dropping new videos like this. And we love to get involved with you guys. So by all means, hop on our Discord. We've got that as well. Ask us questions on Twitter. Talk to us about this stuff because we want to hear your opinions. So we'll see what happens. We'll give it a couple weeks, but I'm gonna say they don't overturn it. Drake's leaning that way too, but we'll give it a couple weeks to see what the commission does.